yes, with recruitment of those youth. I mean, there hasn't been a shortage, I will tell you that for sure.
Good morning, Anthony.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Feel free to use that chat feature here if you would like to tell us who you are, what district you're from, and maybe what your role is. So we'd love to see who's joining us today. We're up to 58 participants so far, and I know we're still expecting more. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy days for this meeting today. This is our SCAS fall meeting for 2020, and our topic today is equitable NGS via distance learning. All right, so quick welcome and introductions. Let's see, Anthony, if you could go ahead and hit that first one. I think these fly in maybe. So if you have not heard of the SCAS organization before, a sincere welcome to joining us. We are the Southern California Association of Science Specialists. And basically you can see all of the logos there on the side of the slide. We represent many county offices in Southern California and the California Science Project. And we are just so glad that you're here. This group spans from Santa Barbara all the way down to Imperial, over to San Bernardino, and everywhere in between. So this really is a group for everybody. All right, next one. Our mission. So if you're new to us, We just want to let you know we're here to promote the professional competence, status, recognition, and support of science education leaders, specialists, and supervisors. Further public support of science education and improvements in its scientific content and use of effective pedagogical strategies. Support excellence in science education, especially at the K-12 levels, and encourage the scientific and technological literacy among the general population. And our SCAS board, good morning, I'm Christy Pierce. I'm the current president, and I am from Orange County Department of Ed. We have our president-elect, John Lazarczyk from Imperial County, our vice president, Greg Nicholas from Riverside County, our secretary, Maria Samani from the California Science Project, treasurer, Ed Rodovic, and our past president, Anthony Kwan from LA County. And you might be wondering, hey, is there a membership for this club? You bet. Okay, so if you want to become a member, it is absolutely free, and you can be absolutely anybody. So if your mission and goals align with our mission that I just read out, you are more than welcome to be a member. There's no cost, and we give lots of very pertinent email updates in between meetings. So if you want to stay up to date with what's going on with science education here in the state, and especially Southern California, then go ahead and become a member. We have a website that will be highlighted in just a couple minutes that you can join. And also we do have Twitter. So if you'd like to tweet during this meeting, give us a shout out. We would definitely appreciate that. All right, next slide. So our agenda today, hopefully you got this in your email from Anthony a day or two ago. We're doing some welcome and updates right now. We will have an opening speaker, and then we have some breakouts. So what's important about the breakouts is we have a lot of people joining this main room, and we want to give you choice. So each breakout will be repeated twice, the exact same thing. So you get to choose 2 of the 5 breakouts this morning. You will have a different Zoom link to join that room, okay? And that's on your agenda. If you need any help when we get to that, just ask us in the chat and we will help us out. All the resources from all 5 breakouts will be included in your participant folder after the end of this meeting. So you might say, Christy, it's not there yet. That's true, because we don't want you looking through all of them while we're doing our presentation, but you will have access to all of them at the end. All right, at 11:45 to 12, you will stay in that last breakout you were in, and somebody from the SCAS leadership will do a closing and a survey with you. And then this wasn't on the original agenda, but we thought some of you might like just an opportunity to connect with us or with others. So there's an optional, completely optional 12 to 12:30 lunch hangout that will happen again in this room. And yes, we're probably actually going to be eating our lunch. So if you want to come and hang out with us informally from 12 to 12:30, feel free to do that. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John.
Good morning, everyone. So the question we want to ask you right now, before we dive into the bulk of the meeting, is how are you feeling today? If you've ever heard about Dr. Mark Brackett or read his book, everyone in this room, and there's 72 of us, have permission to feel. I know some of you have already started school. Some of you may start on Monday. So I want you to look at this image. I call it the Blob Activity. Actually, I don't call it, someone else did. Someone calls it the Blob Activity. And what we'd like you to do is just take a look at these blobs and select a number that represents how you're feeling today, and maybe about how this, how is this going to be opportunity to learn with the SCAS team. And then just place your answer in the chat, and then tell us a little bit of why you're feeling that way. So the next slide will kind of make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. So if we hit the next slide. Well, if you can see this, go ahead and pick a number, drop it in the chat. Tell us a little bit why you're feeling that way. There you go. There it is. So we got all kinds of blobs there. So I'll give you guys a minute or two to select a blob, place it in the chat, and tell us a little bit about why you're feeling that way. Wow, so we have 19, been on Zooms up to 6 hours a day for 3 weeks. Wow, feel that pain. 18, awesome, great. So a wide range. 2, working mom from Nellie. Boy, it's gotta be a challenge. Hanging on. Happy to see familiar faces. Blob 7. Smiling through a wild ride, isn't that the truth? Lots of Zooming, not a lot of sleeping. It's Friday, yes it is, right? Need friends to get my mood up. Wow, so a wide range here. I'm hanging on, seeing what others need a hand. Hanging in there. Got whiplash. Wow. So as you continue to put these in the chat, just know that we are here to support you, right? That's the mission of SCAS, like Christy said. We're here to support you guys in any way, shape, or form, especially in the area of science, whether it's pedagogy or you know, resources that we could give you. So you're trying to help teachers, collaborating with others. Yes, swim workout, exercise really helps during this time. So thank you guys so much for participating. We appreciate it. We know that there's a wide range of blobs out there right now, and we really appreciate hearing from you guys. So with that, I'll pass it on. Thank you, guys. Oh yeah, there's that blob. If you click on it, it links to a little bit more in-depth activity that's pretty cool. You can kind of, if you tell them that I'm feeling 11, it may give you some hints on how to be when you're in that type of blob. So really cool activity.
Am I taking care of the SCAS website? I'm not.
Scott, I believe that's you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Christy. I appreciate it. I just wanted to highlight the SCAS website that Anthony's put up there right now for you. We're in the middle of revamping that website. Meredith and I are going to revamp it, put a whole bunch of resources on there for you. Make sure you know what's going on up and down the state of California with science. Anthony, if you would just click the join us, I just wanted to show them as well. Christy had already talked to you about joining and becoming a member of SCAS when you go to that website. And I just put the link in the chat for you if you want to go to it and save it under your favorites. And when you go to join us and just scroll down, it gives you a place where you can fill out all your pertinent information and become a member of SCAS. Like Christy said, there is no cost for that. Puts you on the email listserv, so you get all the pertinent information and you can see what's going on with science up and down the state. And if you have any comments on it, you can leave some comments for us as well in terms of things you'd like to see on that website. And I think that's good. Back to you, Christy.
All right, thank you, Scott. I believe Anthony's going to give us some updates now.
Got a lot of updates for all of you, so here we go. First things first, we got CAA for science. So you are supposedly beginning to give this on September 8th of 2020. The CDE is asking for the districts to also take care when delivering this and maybe not start it right away as much as delay it until you can figure out how to administer these tests remotely. There are also administration planning guides that are available. And if you aren't aware, each county has a version that is to be delivered for specific students as well. So when you go to this particular bit.ly site, it'll take you straight to that website, and then you can download the test for your county. So Ventura's is different from LA's, it's different from Orange, it's different from Imperial, et cetera, et cetera. For those of you who are helping with the CAA for Science, there's also a test examiner training video available for you as well. And we've done our best to try to capture all of these information and put it into a hyperdoc for you. So that will be in the resource folder for all of you, hopefully by the end of the day. All right. We also want to make sure that you are aware of the tools for teachers to support learning. This is replacing the old website that was on the CASP site. And the tools for teachers is a suite of instruction professionals resources. Originally, it was for math and ELA, but there will be science. And right now it is at the elementary level with plans for additions of middle school and high school for science. So the launch is September 30th, 2020. And you will need to register to watch the webinar by September 6th. So please be sure to go ahead and do that. And again, we'll have that registration in the hyperdoc for you. We have also got the CAS 2020-2021. Those of you who have been emailing me over the last couple of months have been asking whether or not this is going to be delivered. So here's the official word. Yes, it is going to be delivered. All students in grades 5 and 8 will administer the CAS unless they're registered for CAA for Science. Again, grade 12, that's no change, but all grade 12 students must take the test if they have not yet already done that. So the CAS test will begin in the window of January 12th through the July 15th, but that is just the window of operation. Your district will actually select when the test is going to be delivered during that period. So lots of questions about what happened last year. So those students who took it, if they are a sophomore or junior last year, they took the test and they submitted. That means they literally hit the submit button last year. That means that they are done. Those students who took it but didn't hit the submit, so they started it but didn't finish it, they are not going to, they are not considered done, so they are going to have to take that test by the end of grade 12. Oh yes, and so again, LEAs that are conducting in-person instruction, there are guides for physically distanced test administration, so please be sure that you are looking for that. Again, if you are going to be one of the people who are giving that test, right? Science safety at home. We've also been getting a lot of emails, not just me, but all the other county offices as well, in terms of what about science safety at home. So we have created a folder, and that resource folder is in the SCAD general members, and you'll have lots of documents from NSTA, Flynn Scientific, and a few other organizations with suggestions and recommendations for science safety at home. Just to let you know, as far as how to conduct the science pieces at home, if you're doing live labs, just think safety, just think kitchen science, and we are not talking about simulations. So simulations would not be considered a hazard, but please know that we are working on an upcoming sample. In fact, Dean Gilbert is on. He's actually working with Burbank, and I'm assisting with looking at what a sample could look like. So we hope to get something out to all of you. And again, thank you to Jennifer Mosley over at Burbank, and thank you, Dean Gilbert, for assisting with that. We're also very excited because if you have been inundated with resources and apps and everything and don't know what to do, we hope to get this out to you soon, where you will be able to click on a grade level, click on a science imaging practice, and then you will get the actual tool that you need to conduct your distance learning piece without having to do the research, etc., because we will also provide in that tool some tips and tools about what you can use that tool for. So looking forward to that one soon. We're vetting now. We're in phase 1, trying to move into phase 2, And again, we're trying to move very quickly on that. So be on the lookout for that. And those of you who are going to the breakout with Anna Barberin and Rudy Escobar, you can privately chat Rudy to ask him more questions about that as well. Okay. Finally, we've got the virtual time. So we are currently piloting the toolkit for instructional materials evaluation. This is for those of you who are looking at textbook adoptions. And so the toolkit for instructional materials, the virtual version, will actually be available for access to all of you. And you can do it without a facilitator. That means you should be able to run that without anybody from the county office, SCAS, CSTA, etc. But if you do want facilitation with that tool, please let us know, and then we will be using this virtual time anyway. So whether it's facilitated or unfacilitated, these tools will be available to you to help you finish, start, or even with the pilot of your adopted materials. All right. So Mariano and Jennifer, up to you now.
Thank you, Anthony. This is Mariano Aranda from the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And with me today, I have Jennifer Gately, and I'll introduce her right now. But I just wanted to thank every single one of you for being here. And I know so many different options, so many different schedules that were put out to us throughout the whole entire summer, and now even changes that are taking place. And every single one of you are adjusting out there to implement these long distance learning forums that we have. So I just like to thank you for being flexible and being able to, ultimately give the best kind of education that we can for our students. So thank you very much for having that. So I just want to introduce Jennifer Gately. She's also from our county, San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And in our department, she's a program manager for SBCSS, the Systems of Support. And she's gonna give you an introduction to the CCE Distance Learning Consortium. So Jennifer.
Thank you, Mariano. I appreciate the introduction and happy to be here today. I echo everything that was just shared about really giving some strong praise and appreciation to everything our teachers are doing to try to get a successful start to the school year for our students. And that includes launching them into those STEM content areas that we know are so important as we try to really solidify 21st century teaching and learning in a distance learning environment. So we're happy to be here today. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the CCEE, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. It's one of our statewide organizations under CDE. So I'm going to be speaking today on behalf of our Distance Learning Consortium, and you'll see that it's a multi-agency effort that is bringing resources forward to you, to our teachers and leaders, support you in your first steps in distance learning. So this is a super quick overview today, everybody. There's a bit.ly link, I think, in your agenda that has this PowerPoint, as well as the supporting handout. So let you know how to actually get into it. And we hear some challenges there. So the product that I'm going to be showing you today was done in collaboration with several county offices across the state. So San Bernardino County, as well as Kern, Orange, and San Diego, and even Shasta joining in to represent our rural county offices to help create distance learning materials last spring as you all were leaving the building. But we know now as you're not returning to the building that the resources that were created are just as useful and just as needed in our K-12 environments. So what you're going to see, this handout is folder, is a description of the resources that are available to you and the supporting links for how to access all of those materials. They are open source. They are free at no charge. They are pre-K-12. They support from the classroom level of instruction to the parent partnership level of family engagement and on to the teacher capacity level of professional development. So this handout is there. Please feel free to share forward with all of your colleagues, schools, districts, and fellow network participants. So that is accessible to you. What you'll find in that handout as you do a deeper dive into the CCEE, Distance Learning Consortium, is that there are 4 buckets of resources available for educators to support in distance learning. San Bernardino County has created professional development, 3 pathways from early learning to supporting parents in distance learning, and that also focuses on early learning as we recognize parents have a different level of engagement in distance learning than they would with a secondary child. And then the third one is universal design for learning, as we introduce the foundational pieces and to learning. And we know that that applies in particular to science and STEM learning as well, as we bridge that gap from intervention to innovation. So that UDL one would be particularly applicable to this audience. Kern has posted in distance learning lessons, cross-curricular, K-12, science being included in some of the available lessons. Orange County has taken a tier 2 approach, mainly ELA and math. But we know as we look at science proficiencies and STEM competencies that often literacy across the content areas is your #1 barrier to engaging in science and STEM. So there would be definitely a connection there for this audience. And then the third bucket of resources available comes from San Diego County, and they really took a multidisciplinary approach to thematic instruction. So a lot of those units are very strong and grounded in science and STEM, and then they have the cross-cultural competencies for literacy integrated into those units as well. And again, all of them designed for distance learning, free. As you engage in those, you will see some UDL principles. I'm sure you've been talking about that. Asynchronous for you teachers. Professional development. You could very simply take them as a take and go into your classroom instruction, or you could download them, modify them, and you could simply review them as an exemplar model of what a distance learning lesson plan might look like and the components that support students' learning goals and outcomes away from the classroom. So there's a lot of different ways to approach them, but they all do have an MTSS approach, whole child. You'll see social emotional learning, behavioral supports, especially as I just came online and I heard you talking about science in the home and making sure that there are lessons in there that really support routines and relationships that foster, you know, those kind of environments at home, science included. Oops. So again, those are fully accessible. What our hope would be is that those are being shared out with teachers first, especially the San Bernardino County models. We want to continue to foster teacher capacity and really build the ability of teachers to develop high quality learning across the state. And so that starts with our teachers first. But once teachers have that landscape of pivoting their classroom instructional model to distance learning, then we want to hook them into those other modules across the state so that they can apply what they've learned in professional learning to actual classroom instruction. And so those lessons will continue to grow as we engage. Now, currently they are housed in Canvas. One of the county offices, San Diego, is in Google. The rest of them aren't in Canvas because Canvas does give us a robust learning management system that's accessible for all of you across the state. I do want to let you know as you go into those resource links and you access them, you do not need to be a Canvas user. So I'll say that one more time. You do not need to be a Canvas user. If you would like to be a teacher and utilize Canvas from the classroom level, that will require a license. But to simply go in and review the materials and access what is there, the link that is provided is for all educators statewide, licensed or not. So please make sure that you go to each county office's handout. It will give you very explicit directions on how to access the resources for those of you that are not Canvas users. It is still accessible for you. For those of you who are Canvas users, there's also information about how to go into the Commons. I'll show you that in a minute. And you'll see all of the resources hubbed together into one area in what Canvas calls their Commons Consortium. Okay. So again, just some quick little tips. I know our time is almost over. They are free. They are accessible to all educators statewide, pre-K-12. The login information is on each flyer, and so you have all that accessible in your hyperlinked agenda in the folder that we've provided for you. Again, if you are a Canvas user, they're going to be hubbed together into the Commons. You can just search for California Continued Learning, and you'll find all of the courses and modules there. Canvas users, you can download, take, and go. Non-Canvas users, you will follow the link on each flyer, and you will be able to review the materials and modify those as well. And then I've linked into this, there are additional resources to support distance learning on the California website, including webinars that overview each county office's materials, the distance learning playbooks, and a lot of other resources that really help to define best practices in distance learning, cross-curricular, STEM being a very, very large part of that as well. So those are just a few resources that we wanted to make available to you. And again, I know our time today was very brief, and so I hope that gives you just an overview of what San Bernardino County, Kern, Orange, San Diego, and Shasta have created for you to try and help you in this journey this year. So I'm going to take a pause, and I'm going to take a peek at our chat box, Mariano, as well, if there's anything you'd like to add in closing. Or if there's any quick questions that we can answer for you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Again, all of this, if we didn't get an opportunity to look at the links, we put some in the chat box here, but it will also put all this presentation too at the end with all the resources that are going to be available to every single one of you. So thank you, Jennifer, for that great presentation. Again, that's the whole purpose of both SCAS and then just having this collaboration throughout Southern California and actually statewide of having the support so that we can't do this alone. We cannot continue on teaching in isolation, and we do have these systems of support here for us to, again, bring better quality of education through this virtual learning to all of our students. So again, thank you, Jennifer, for that. And then I have the privilege of introducing Nathan Inoue. He's from our Ventura County Office of Education, and he's going to present on the framework for developing high quality distance learning units and lessons. So again, thank you, Jennifer and Nathan. It's you.
Great. Thank you, Mariano and Jennifer. And thank you for sharing all of those wonderful resources. And just welcome all of you to our SCAS meeting. It's one of the opportunities that this has really afforded is that we can all be able to come from different places virtually. In the past, when we had to do this face-to-face, one of the barriers was the transportation. So it's really nice to see all the different counties represented here on this call. Do I have sharing or do you want me to share my, or let me go ahead and share my screen.
Let me know. I can share it or I've got it.
Actually, let me go ahead and share. Sorry for the delay here. So we'll put this in sharing mode and you'll have access to this presentation. So first of all, I just want to start by recognizing that in the spring, whatever role that you played, whether you're a teacher in the classroom or supporting teachers as an administrator at TOSA or at the county level, it's just amazing the stories that we have heard and experienced when we went into really just given days to go into distance learning. So we have to really recognize the heroic efforts that you've all made. You really all are heroes in this effort. And we've learned a lot. And we have to remember that, and I appreciate this quote that comes from the Distance Learning Playbook, and that the pandemic teaching of 2020 was really not distance learning. It was also not homeschooling either, which is a choice parents make for very specific reasons. We went into what we would really is crisis teaching. And now what we're trying to do with all of these wonderful resources that are coming out of the Distance Learning Consortium and what teachers are being asked to do now is to take the time to be more thoughtful about how they're delivering this distance learning. So my presentation today is around a framework for helping us think about what are the components, and we're going to call those domains, that should exist in high quality distance learning units and lessons. And just to give you a little background about where this came from and why a framework, was that the California Department of Education recognizes that we were in crisis teaching and that we want to learn from that. So being reflective about that experience, they wanted to take lessons that were aligned to standards and start to convert those into distance learning lessons, which now you're going to be able to find in those resources that the consortium's providing. But they're also going to have another place called the repository, which is supposed to be released in late August. We're hoping that's going to be released next week, but maybe it'll be at the end of this month. It's in partnership with the California Partnership for Math and Science Education, which all the county offices are part of, and many of you are on this call today, are partners in that. And there was a small group that convened to help the California Department of Education identify some standards-based lessons and begin to transform them into distance learning resources for teachers that will be released. But in order to do that, we recognized we needed to have a framework to be grounded in, to make sure that the lessons had all of the elements of what we consider high quality. So we came up with a framework that has 4 domains that I mentioned. These 4 domains are, one of them is the social emotional support, and I'll break that down in a little bit. And then there's a technology context that exists. And of course, we want those distance learning units and lessons to be implementing content standards. And then also how they're delivered, which is the distance learning pedagogy. So these are the 4 domains, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this, just quick overview of the framework. And to be honest, each one of these domains is really has so much depth, and so I invite you to learn a lot more about these through professional development. So, but also within these domains, there's a recognition that there's a continuum within the domain. I'm actually using this picture because when I was a kid, I took some piano lessons. I think I can still plunk out a few songs, but I'm by no means a master pianist, right? So when I talk about these domains, there's a recognition that as the necessity of the professional development and understanding of these domains really requires a lot of attention because over time, that's when you really get the depth and become more of a master. Another way to think about it, oftentimes we use the analogy of the difference between a cook who we definitely need to survive through cooking, but also when you start to master the foods, the different ingredients and how they're combined, you become a master chef. So these domains have those same components of depth. So this is not a checklist, and that's why I mentioned that. So when we think about the domain of social emotional support, there's these indicators, and we call these indicators because these are different components, and it's going to look different for every teacher. And that's a recognition we want also to make very transparent. Within the social emotional support indicators, you may have often heard that as we go into distance learning, or as we are in distance learning, I should say, that we really need to focus on Maslow's before Bloom's, right? We really need to have the students be in an emotional state that they can then be able to do academic learning. But if they're not in that emotional state, then really academic learning is not going to happen. Going one step further, we use the CASEL, which is cited at the bottom of here, a lot of their resources around their approaches. And they break that down into 5 components. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. These are all components that students need to be building within their distance learning experience in order really to access the learning. So if a distance learning lesson doesn't have elements or indicators of these different components, in the lesson, it's missing the social emotional domain. Going also another step in terms of how to effectively implement these approaches, they have a model called SAFE. That acronym is looking at how to sequence those lessons, how to keep it active, focused, and explicit. If you're looking for resources around here, I invite you to look at the CASEL website. They have a lot of resources there. I also encourage you that some of your best experts at your school sites are going to be your counselors. They have been trained in supporting students' social emotional needs, and they are available and have lots of activities that they can share with you. So I invite you to also use that as a resource. There is also social emotional curriculum out there as well that some schools are purchasing as well. Something that I want to mention also in terms of this connection around, not that it's a separate thing, but part of being your lesson, is that it can be connected to content. If you're working with elementary school students, you might ask them to identify an animal, or you might have pictures of animals and ask them to pick an animal that they might identify, and then why. And then that launches this opportunity for discussions of what animals they might know as part of their prior knowledge. And you can build on some of those great things like, what kind of structures do they have that help them survive in their environment. So the next domain is around the technology context. We have to recognize that each one of us are using different platforms. You might be using Canvas. You might be using Google Classroom. And each of these tools have resources in them that help support the learning of students. And there's a lot of them, and it's very overwhelming initially. And so over time, as you start to discover those tools, it will help you better implement those lessons using those tools. So that's a learning management context. There's real-time tools that you're using like Google Meet and Zoom, and then just application tools like Padlet and Flipgrid. Each of the teachers have a different context, so it's going to look different for each teacher, and we have to recognize that as an indicator. And so we have to think about what access students have as an important context as well. So if we offer tools that students don't have really the opportunity to use because they may not be able to have a camera on their computer like that's required for something like Flipgrid, right? That's not a good indicator for high quality distance learning lesson. We have to keep those things in mind, right? So we have to select the tools, the technology that's really going to help support the teaching, and not pick the tool because that's supposed to be important or the core here based on this quote, right? The third domain is around implementation of content standards. You're probably here because you're the expert in NGSS, right? So, you're using these tools to help you as indicators identify those high quality distance the content standards implementation. So what I have up here is Appendix A from the Next Generation Science Achieves website on the conceptual shifts. You might be using that to help you as indicators of the implementation of the NGSS. You might also be using the less of this, more of this table that's found in the California Science Framework. You're also probably using as indicators how people learn, 1 as well as 2, and the 3 key findings from how people learn how people learn the first publication, and there's 3 key findings from that, as well as how people learn 2, which is a more recent publication, building off of how people learn and the research that was done there, and the 4 key findings. That's going to come into play a little bit later as we talk about the importance of UDL and what was mentioned earlier from the Distance Learning Consortium and how important that is. The last domain is the Distance Learning Pedagogy indicator. This quote comes from Keith Matheny that he shared with us and talks about what happens is far more important than where it happens. So it's really what the teacher is doing, those subtle teacher moves that's really going to make a difference in terms of increasing the learning. You can look at, you can cite Hattie's work in what distance learning has actually a very low effect, but the things that we do with technology, what happens in terms of the teacher's usage of that exponentially increases in terms of effect size. So some of these distance learning pedagogy indicators might be in the lesson is how we use Zoom. So we're all, many of you are using some kind of, synchronous, application like Zoom or Google Meet with your students. But it's how we're using Zoom, whether we're using breakout rooms. There's a picture here of a fishbowl. I just saw an example of a really a neat pedagogical move where the teacher asks all the students to actually put themselves off camera, except for the 3 students that they were having a conversation with. So the other students were actually the fishbowl, and being able to hear this dialogue and coaching between the teacher and this small group of students, right? That's a small pedagogical move that's an indicator of high quality distance learning. Promoting that academic discourse and how you approach that can come in different forms in distance learning that we didn't necessarily have to implement in a face-to-face environment. Using applications like Padlet, so when students are doing scientific models, there's actually a way for them to use a draw feature within Padlet or another application and then link it to Padlet. Being able to record in Flipgrid their explanation of a model, right? So these are just examples. This is by no means comprehensive. And then what I mentioned is in this framework, which actually is already in the folder that you can have access to, encompassing all 4 domains when we're planning for high distance or high quality distance learning units and lessons. We really want to be using the framework from Universal Design for Learning. Many of you are familiar with the reason why this is so important for planning. And this comic really illustrates that well. We have a student over here who's asking the person who's shoveling the snow, could you please shovel the ramp? And the person with the shovel is saying, well, all these other kids are over here are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. And the student's response is, well, if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in, right? So if we think about breaking down barriers and using for students to access learning, then we're really helping support all students' learning in our lessons. So the Universal Design for Learning framework is on the CAS.org website, which you can access. So I invite you to look at that. That supports how to plan for it. We use 3 guiding principles around when we use the UDL framework. One is that we want to set clear and rigorous goals. And then we want to think about, anticipate, and this is all in pre-planning your lesson for distance learning, what kind of barriers might exist. And then really thinking about what options might help reduce those barriers for all students. So when we think about distance learning and those 4 domains, the question really is how might UDL be included in the 4 domains? Well, when we think about setting clear and rigorous goals, really what we're talking about is what are those social emotional supports that the students will need in order for them to be open to learning. And then we look at, and that book is supposed to represent that icon, the rigorous implementation of content standards. So in our case for this meeting, it's around NGSS, right? And then to anticipate those barriers, we're really looking at all 4 domains, right? And how each classroom is unique in what barriers might exist. It might be the technology context issue. Maybe there's not great internet access or speed, I should say. So students can't put virtual backgrounds on in their video for Zoom. And that's the case for some. It takes a lot of bandwidth for that. So that could be something that we anticipate. So we might have to be careful about saying, I'd like to invite all students to put their favorite picture as their virtual background because not all students will be able to participate in that. So anticipating those barriers and thinking about that context in the planning process. Each domain poses some possible anticipated barriers. And then looking at the UDL framework, design options to reduce barriers for that. So I just want to end with, I know that was really a quick overview of the framework for developing high quality distance learning units and lessons. This was used to help ensure that the lessons going into the repository met all 4 of those domains. And during the process, they were using the UDL framework. And one of the reasons why the UDL framework is overarching is because, again, it really touches on each of those 4 domains. It's not a separate thing. And so I think, Christy, I don't know if we have about 6 minutes to be able to put people into a quick breakout room to select a domain and discuss what you heard in this presentation about the framework. Maybe select one of the domains and share an example of a strategy or an indicator that has been really successful or that you have a resource for in your breakout. Is that possible? Or actually, do I have control for that?
It's through me. So,
Okay.
Christy,
Hey, Anthony.
Or you can go ahead.
Anthony, this is John. Before we go into the breakout rooms, the leadership here at SCAS just wants to address a link that was placed in the chat room. And Christy put a little message on the chat that link does not reflect, if you clicked on it and saw it and read it, that link does not reflect the beliefs of SCAS, any of the county offices that are represented here today, or any of today's facilitators. We apologize if it was offensive to anyone. Just know that that was a mistake. And so again, we humbly apologize, and we hope that doesn't distract from today's message. So thank you.
Thank you, John. And I apologize for that too. I double checked the link there. I know that Jennifer had problems with her internet, and so maybe there was some problems in trying to get the correct link in there. So I apologize greatly for that. And then definitely I put on the correct link now so that all of you guys could have access to that. So thank you.
Nathan, how many minutes do you want for the breakout?
Christy, we'll need to convene them back a couple minutes before 10 o'clock, right?
Yep, you can have until about 9:50, about 6 or 7 minutes.
So if we could just have small groups for 6 minutes, that would be awesome.
Okay, 6 minutes, opening all the rooms. Please accept your invite. Here we go.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for your flexibility, Anthony. I probably should have warned you that I was going to ask for a breakout room if possible. I didn't know if we'd have enough time.
34, Anthony.
Got it.
Thank you.
Here we go.
So it looks like we're almost all back, if not all back. So welcome back from the breakout room. I hope you met somebody new from a different county. And we just want to close in saying, at least this part, if a few of you are so inclined to share at least one word that left an impression from your breakout session. So maybe it's a word that's related to an indicator or a domain or UDL from this session. We'd appreciate just kind of getting that feedback. And just want to end with saying we're all in this together, and we believe in you. We all need some grace during this period as we continue to increase our skills and our experiences implementing distance learning. And we've been sharing this mantra about achieving distance learning Zen, about keeping distance learning really simple, organized, focused, and fun. So continue the great work that you're doing. I hope that the framework provides a little bit of context of how you might approach your implementation, and we hope that that was useful. I'm going to pass it off to Christy.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Nathan, and thank you everybody for your participation in those small breakouts. We have now the opportunity for you to choose your first of 2 breakouts. Again, each breakout will be repeated a little bit later today. So hopefully you had a chance to take a look yesterday, or you're taking a look right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of these breakouts that will start at 10:05. Okay, so give everybody about 5 minutes to go grab another cup of coffee, use the restroom, whatever you need to do. And then you'll join a new specific Zoom link, okay, which I know Anthony's been putting in the chat, and it's also on your agenda. Okay, so you're actually leaving this main meeting, going to a new breakout. The breakouts will be 45 minutes each. You will get a nice 10-minute break in between breakout 1 and 2, and then you'll just choose a second link for your second breakout. All the links for the breakouts are the same, first and second, so you should be able to just click that link. Okay, at the end of that breakout, you are going to have your closing in that breakout with a member of the SCAS leadership team. So this is where I'm going to say goodbye to all of you collectively, and thank you so much for joining us. The breakouts are going to be amazing. Please do hang out and see those. And then remember that optional lunch. If you want to come back to this main meeting room, it's that same link. You will be here from 12 to 12:30. And if anybody has any burning questions that you need answered just right now and you don't feel like going to a breakout, Anthony and myself will be here to help answer any individual or small group questions. Okay.
And this room will stay open. This
meeting room will stay open. So if there's any questions, put them in the chat. Otherwise, hopefully you see the breakout links. 10:05, your facilitators for those will start those. So please take a quick break and then come right back and join everybody. Thank you so much, everyone.